Right, what have I got today? Bush. It's a smaller light today, but it's a one that I've been meaning to do for quite some time, so I have carried it for an extended period of time, which I like to do, and by doing that it means I know a little bit more about the light. So this is a one from Sofirn. It's the Sofirn SC21, and I think I got this one from Sofirn. They were kind enough to send me this. They've been pretty good. Sofirn recently offering me different lights, and I offered to have a look at this, which is great. But even though they've sent me this at no cost for an honest test, that won't affect the results. I always give an honest review, always will. There you go, just letting you know that. Okay, so Sofirn SC21, very small light. I'm very interested to have a look at this, not just because it's small, and you know I quite like the small lights. I know sometimes the channel gets accused of only looking at the small lights, but I like doing that because those are the things I carry. I don't carry these behemoths and leviathans that, you know, you've got to get a golf cart around. I like little lights that I can use and carry and enjoy. And two of my favourites still, but really cheap, are the on the road M3. It's the M3 Pro and the M3 here. Still like these small orange peel reflector lights that just do the job. Small, put them in your pocket, love them. And I'm hoping this is the same, although this uses a totally different LED. This is using the Samsung LH351D off the top of my head. I hope I got that right. If not, I'll put something up here to say sorry. So let's see what you get in the box. So let's get this out here. Not a lot in the box, pretty straightforward. So Bush, get that in the bin. Instructions, yeah, can't be bothered to read them. Bush in the bin as well. What's that? That's just a little bit of extra there. As the Bush, get that in the bin. Charging cable, which we'll go over. Well, I'll take it out of the packet because I want to test that. So we'll test that. And this one comes with a Type A USB. So there's the Type A. Has to go in a specific way around. That would go in whichever your host is, which is providing the power, and then this would go into the light. And now it's Type C, so hooray, well done. I'm glad to see more lights with Type C. So it is omnidirectional. You can put it in that way or that way, it doesn't matter. I much prefer that, and I use Type C for everything. I've used it for my last 3 mobile phones and all sorts of things, GoPro and everything. Nice to see that. This is actually quite a nice cable as well. Feels pretty hard, but we'll check that. What does this say? Notice, take out the insulation sheet. Yeah, so there'll be a little thing in there. I have tested this obviously, but I've put this back so you're going to see exactly what you would get. So get rid of that. What's this rubbish? Let's have a look. This looks like a lanyard and some O-rings, but we'll check because I like to show you exactly what you get. Take that out of the packet. Let's have a look. Okay, so there's your 2 standard O-rings which go between the machined parts where you've got a threaded section. You know, you twist them together, and this ensures waterproofing. In regards waterproofing on this, there's the claim, and I use the word claim because it may or may not be true. It seems to be. I've run it under the tap and it hasn't had any problems. I've dunked it in the bucket in the garden there with the green water, and I didn't have any problems. Oh, I can't see any problems. There's no. Let's just double check because I only did the water test yesterday. No, I can't see any condensation or anything, which would usually suggest that there's water ingress. That hasn't happened. I made sure this was seated before I did that, and it was okay under the tap. They're claiming IPX8, in other words, you can put it under 2 meters of water, or is it 1 meter? I think it's 1.5 or 2 meters of water for about an hour, and you should be okay, even though that pressure of the water will still be trying to get in. Now, bear in mind that claim will probably only be true if this is seated properly, because there is an entry point. Even though this is all sealed up, there's an entry point for the charging, but we'll go over that. So you get the two little O-rings there which help with that, so feel okay. They don't feel like the cheapy ones. Bush, get them. I mean, I've got so many O-rings now, I probably don't need to keep them. Here's your lanyard. You'd obviously connect that and then put that around your wrist like that. Feels like an okay one. Let's just check for strength. So what I do is I put it around the finger and I pull until it hurts. Ow, 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 ow. You can see that's sore. That's left an indent there, if I can get it to focus. Yeah, so that hurt. No problems, because some of them snap. That seems okay. Even though Sofirn is what I would consider a budget manufacturer, that stuff seems to be okay. Obviously the paint could be thicker on some of them, but okay, so we'll get rid of that. Here's the clip. Now, I did mention this in the initial look at this when I took it out of the box. If you have a look, and I'll show you there, let's zoom in there. Can you see that mark there? That's where the paint's come off. I say paint, they call it anodization. It's, you know, it's a covering anyway. And I'll maintain that zoom and I'll show you the other side. So there's the other side, and that also has a, get it to focus, there you go, that also has an issue there. So we'll zoom back out. Now what causes that is when you put this clip on, because it's removable, and I like the clip, it's deep carry, so if you put that in your pocket, there's only that protruding really. It's pretty good. I sort of use a finger method to take it out, and then boosh, it comes out, because this is quite a nice clip. It doesn't come off when you don't want it to, and it's reversible as well. You see how you've got it, it goes in both directions. That's your main direction, obviously. I think in this direction it could be a little bit harder. You see how that easily lifts, very easily. I put this on the back of the, well, it was the side of the right hand side of the bag that I use, and I think that could have been, maybe it's a little bit longer, but maybe they've done that to keep it out of the way of the port, but you can twist that around. I would have liked to have seen this a little bit longer and a tiny little bit more. You see the gap, see it? I would prefer to have seen that sitting like that, so there's a bit more strength in the spring. But watch when you remove this, watch, and you might hear it there. You see that? You see the way it comes up there, and it scratches the anodization off. It didn't do it so much there, it did it a little bit. I did it there as well, so just bear in mind that the anodization is going to come off pretty easily, but that seems to be a thing on a lot of Sofirn lights. It doesn't affect the light. All it means is you're uncovering the I think it's aluminum, this, so it's just something to bear in mind. But the clip could be a little bit stronger, a little bit longer, but I do appreciate the fact that it's okay. It's pretty rigid, and it does the job. So put that in there. And in regards to the bottom, I just want to show you, if you did want to put the lanyard on, it's got an okay fixing mechanism. So what you do is, there you go. So you can use that there. You can put it through there. The problem is, I would have preferred to have seen two holes. So you see how you've got one hole there where you can put this through. So you would loop this through. You'd use like a sort of a loop knot, and it would pull tight. I would have preferred to have seen two holes, because what happens is, if you imagine, I'll show you just quickly. If you imagine this goes through, and you imagine that then loops over, then the lanyard attachment itself is going to go over this. So it prevents it from sitting quite, I mean, it will sit like that, but it's not going to be, if it's a very flat surface or you put it down quickly, there's a danger it'll fall. I prefer to see the attachment method where you've got a hole here and a hole here, and then what you can do is you can loop it to the side, and this comes off to the side and nothing protrudes over this section. But that's what they've chosen to do. Not the end of the world, and I certainly don't use these. I'm not scared of someone pulling the torch away from me and running off like a ninja. Boosh. Okay, so let's just check the charging on this before I go into some of the specs, because that was one of the issues I had. So I'll show you what happened. So let's have a look. So let's say I wanted to charge this. Now, yes, I know, I realise you get a cable, so we'll try their cable first. So type A to type C. So then you plug it in here, and I'll show you, look, you see, it goes in okay. Boom. In fact, I'll turn that off there. So you can see that's charging, it's green. So that shows you that it's charging. In fact, I think it's probably about finished charging. Okay, fine. No problems there. It charges at around 5 volts. In my testing, it charges between about 0.7 of an amp to 0.8. It peaks sometimes at about 1 amp, but not all the time. It's rather sensible. I did notice a little bit of heat when this was charging, but when I took the battery out and I pressed it against my face and I tested it, it wasn't ridiculous heat levels, but it does charge quite rapidly, which is decent. Now that looks brilliant, doesn't it? Now here's the problem, watch. Here's I think this is a Blitzwolf. It's a high amp, high data cable. Type C, so type A to type C, so you would do the same thing. So let's say you're out camping and you plug that in. And you think, right, time to charge the light. Fantastic, I can't wait. Now look what happens. Look, it doesn't fit. Now it's hard to see, so let's have a proper look here. This is too far to the left and the right. It will not work. It's not going in. I was unable to get some cables to work. There had to be ones where they had a really, really small end. Now that's no good, is it? That's a big problem. So I'm going to have to mark them down for that. And I mean, obviously it's an easy fix. All they need to do is mill this wider on the body on the CNC machine, but then of course that means rejigging this. You can't just do that yourself with a Dremel, because then you lose waterproofing. Now that's a shame. Now I could take the cables that I've got and take a bit off, but I don't want to have to do that. I mean, these are standard cables and I've never had a problem with these with any other hardware that I own, so it's a shame. So I'm sad to see that, but we'll cover charging a little bit more in, you know, as we'll move on, but let's sort of stick to the basics just for now. Okay, so in regards to the basics, like I say, it's using a Samsung LED, and you can see it down there. It's pretty nice. They didn't give me a tint, in other words, the color reproduction tint on this, like the Kelvin of the color of the tint. It seemed to be more like a sort of 6000K. That would be my guess. It looks a bit sort of more warm because of the emitter, but I don't think it's as warm as something like a 5000K. Certainly not. In fact, if I turn that on, if I can get it to turn on, have I got this locked or what? 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't remember. In fact, silly me, watch. I didn't even follow my own advice. So take that off. If you remember the advice, there's the insulation slip. Might help. Boosh, right. So there you go. So I'll just show you quickly. So it looks quite warm, but obviously it's not as warm as something like, if I can find it, there's the M3 there. So this is the Sofirn on the left here, and then we'll turn this on. This will probably look a lot. In fact, I disengaged that. We'll turn it on. Boom. So that's a lot warmer. I think that's closer to sort of 5,000 or that might be 4,500 actually, around 5,000-ish anyway. So you can see this is a lot whiter. This is closer to neutral than this, obviously. I liked the tint and I didn't have any issues with it. So if you're a tint snob, I can't imagine you would have any issues with this. It was decent. Get rid of that. Okay, so this is using a constant current driver. In other words, all they're trying to say is the voltage going through, the juice going to the emitter is constant. It doesn't go on and off rapidly in order to maintain certain output levels. In other words, you shouldn't get any flickering. And I haven't been able to notice any in my testing, which is great. It's using a small 16340 cell, and I'll show you that because one comes with it, in with the price. So if I can get it out, there you go. So there it is there, and the one they give you, this is a wrap obviously. I don't know who's made this cell. I'm unable to tell unless I start ripping it to bits. It's a button top and it comes with it. It's rechargeable. Now nice to see it's an 800 milliamp hours, which is very good for this size cell, and it's a 16340. I can't see anywhere on there what the amp is, but it shouldn't need to be very high on this emitter and at this size. I can't see that there unless you want to zoom right in and you understand all that foreign language. I don't, but nice to see you get a cell with it. So it's a complete kit, so if you're going to buy this as a gift, pretty good. Spring wise, pretty decent. They're pretty solid. In fact, that's very solid, that one, very solid down there. So I've got no issues with compression, and this isn't a super high amp, so it's unlikely to soften over time. Pretty nice circuit board there on the pill, looks decent, not had any issues, no oxidization, decent. So spring on the bottom, and then it's straight onto a contact at the top there, and there's been no problems. And you can see there's the O-ring there, and you do have the replaceables, and it looks like the square type thread there. Had no problems getting that in and out, so let's do that. Now interestingly, I just want to cover this now. When you turn it on, you'll notice that there's an LED in the button, so I'll show you that. So if I turn it on for the initial first 5 seconds, you'll get an indication. Watch. So you see how that's green. So that's giving you something of an indication for the first 5 seconds, and then it goes off. But then obviously this still operates. So you're probably thinking, okay, so what does that mean? Well, green means it's around a full battery. It's not that specific. All they're saying is it's full-ish. Okay, fair enough. If it's red, it means it's around 30% and dropping, so you need to start charging it. And if it's red and flashing, it means critical. In other words, the voltage output is so low, you can start damaging the cell by not charging it. You really need to start charging it at that point, which is good. You know, you can't go to a battery check and say it's exactly this voltage, it's exactly that, but it gives you a nice indication. And I think even for new beginners, that's a decent tool, and it's a quick reminder as to what the cell's doing. But I haven't had any problems. When I initially charged it, I did notice some power loss, but I was unable to replicate that, and it may have been that I didn't lock it out and I had it in my pocket, because I have carried this for over 2 weeks now. Yeah, as of today, it's over 2 weeks. So I was unable to replicate that, so I think that was probably me, but I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. So like I say, they're claiming IPX8. In other words, dust shouldn't get in this, either should water, as long as it's tightened fully. There's only one tighten there, you can't tighten that bit. It's just this section, and then obviously this needs to be seated properly, because behind here is your Type C, which is where you will charge, but obviously water can get in there. But they're claiming IPX8. That may be true if that's very tight. It's not one of the best flaps, but it's also not one of the worst I've seen. It certainly did the job. I dunked it in the bucket in the garden, and I had it under the tap, the cold tap in the kitchen there. No issues. And I certainly can't see any condensation or anything. And as you can see, this is a orange peel reflector. So the reflector round there is orange peel. What it's aiming for, therefore, is it's medium distance, close and medium. So the sort of beam profile you're going to get something of a hot spot there. You can certainly see a hot spot, but it's not obscuring detail too much, and the spill is decent. You get a nice little bit of throw in that central section, and it's got a sensible amount of spill. So if I pull back, when I was out in woodland and stuff, there was a sensible amount of spill for going for walks. Very good design, no issues. It wasn't too deep, this bowl, and it was wide enough, and I think the gap that they've left before you hit the glass is enough. So if you do drop this, there shouldn't be any issues. I didn't have any issues, although I don't think I dropped it like that. I dropped it on its tail a few times, but I can't see anything. There's a little ding there, tiny bit, but it's done pretty good. And as I've mentioned, I think in a few reviews, Sofirn, their anodization seems to be thinner than than companies like Jetbeam. Jetbeam, it's brilliant. It just doesn't seem to come off. I mean, this is ancient. It's certainly come off the clip there, but the actual light itself, perfect. They seem to have used a really thick coating, whereas thinner on the Sofirn. But that doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect the light. Okay, so in regards to charging, what I want to cover is, yes, we know that it uses Type-C, which I love, thumbs up, thank you very much, but does it do Type-C to Type-C? So let's check that now. So if we take a Type-C, in other words, power delivery, because not all lights will allow you to use Type-C to Type-C. Let's check that now. So if I plug that in, let's see what's happening, and it works. There you go. So at this moment in time, 5 volts, you can see it's charging up there, and it's at 0.6 of an amp. Yeah, during all my testing, it's about 0.6 to 0.8. A few rare occasions it peaked up to 1 amp, but it's rather a rapid charger, and I'll leave that charging while I discuss a bit more of the light. So I've had no problems with this, and it will work while charging. So you see how that's charging? Some lights will not allow you to use it while it's charging, but this does. Watch. There, so you can operate it whilst it's charging. I like that feature. I specifically like that if I'm camping, because it means you can get on with things, and I really appreciate that. So I like that. So well done for that. So it will do power delivery, it'll do C to C, it'll do A to C, but bear in mind I did have that issue. I'll show you where the width of some Type-C, you need to be aware that they may be too wide. It's a shame that, isn't it, because it's not that much of a difference. See, it's not, it's not as though this is some sort of Frankenstein plug. It isn't. It's not that much wider, but it just wouldn't allow it, and I think that's something you need to know. Okay, so we'll move on from that. Okay, so we've covered sort of what this button will do when you operate it or when it's charging. Now, in regards to charging, in fact, I'll plug it in again. So let's get the cable there. We'll plug it in and I'll show you what's happening. There you go. So if that's flashing there. So when it's flashing, now if I remember rightly, I think it flashes red when it's charging, and then when it's full it goes to green. Or that means it's terminating charging. So that's just something I wanted to mention. And again, you can see it's still going about 0.6. Ignore that figure there. 5 volts, no problems with it whatsoever. And low voltage, it will warn you, which is, I like that. And this comes with a temp step down. I was out yet again last night with this, and it was around sort of 12 degrees to 15 degrees, quite humid though. And because I'm in a colder environment, temperature step down is better for me. So if you live in a hotter place, you're going to get a quicker step down. Although I would say, bearing in mind its small size and these rather useless small heat sinks, that it's more mass is taking away the heat here on turbo. So if we put that on turbo, there's turbo there, that will heat up, but it's not one of the worst. When I compare it to something like the FWAA, this goes into step down after about 30 seconds, not even that, whereas this lasted like a minute or more, depending on if I'd been using it before. So step down was sensible, and it only did it when necessary, and even when it did, it was very slow and it descended slowly. But bearing in mind, it's for a small light, you're getting around 1,000 lumens out of that, which is pretty good. Like I say, it works whilst charging. I think they've done a really good job. What I'll do is I'll quickly show you, if I get rid of all this, and then I'll show you the UI. So boosh, get that out of the way. Okay, so UI. So there's 2 groups in this, and I think they've been quite sensible to do that. So you've got a classic ramping interface, which is where you can now 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'm in the ramping. Let's just check that. Yeah, okay. So you can go into group 1 or group 2. to switch between them, as long as the light's on, 4 quick presses takes you between group 1 and group 2. Okay, so at this moment in time we are in group 2, which is a classic ramping interface. So you hold it to go up and you hold it to go down. Very simple. So it goes from 1 lumen all the way up to, they're saying 1,000 lumens, and you can still double click for turbo, and that looks the same to me. There was a bit of ambiguity. You know, I'll probably need to relook at the manual at some point, because it seems that it goes from 1 to 1,000, with, you know, the ceiling isn't just below that, and then the double click takes you up. So I'll show you that. So 1 click for on, 1 click for off, and it's got memory mode, so it remembers exactly where you were. So you click and hold and it goes up. And then there should be a momentary flicker. Did you see that flicker? That means you're at maximum ceiling, and then you click and hold. So very bright there. And then there's a momentary flicker which goes down. One thing I didn't like about the ramping mode, the classic ramping mode in group 2 anyway, look how long it takes to ramp. Watch. So holding, it quickly goes up to medium, then it ramps, and then it goes up. It seems to take forever. It's like it rushes a bit, then ponders on, and then goes, whoops, I better finish. I think that they could probably rework that. It takes far too long to ramp all the way down and all the way up. I don't know why that has to take so long. You also have obviously a turbo, so when it's on you can go double click, turbo, maximum, that's 1,000. Very bright there, very decent, very usable. I used this looking for rabbits and things outside, and I was very impressed with that. Or you can click and hold when it's off, so let's make sure that's off. Click and hold takes you straight to moonlight, or should do anyway, but what it's doing is it's taking me to the memory mode of this one. So there, it's taking me to memory mode. In the other group I shall show you now, 1, 2, 3, 4, there you go. So we are now in group 1, which is the stepped, it's still ramping technically, but it's stepped. So if we turn this on, in fact I've locked that, 1, 2, 3, 4, there you go. So once it's on, 1, 2, 3, 4, right, we should be in the right group now. So turn it off. So if I click and hold, yeah, straight to moonlight. So that's the lowest. So straight to moonlight. And if you click and hold normally without holding it, it takes you through memory to wherever you were last in that group. And then if you click and hold, it will cycle. So there's only 3 modes in the main cycle. So you've got low, medium, high, low, medium, high. So I'll give you a little bit more information on that. So if you click and hold, that's 10 lumens. A little bit high. I would have preferred to have seen that maybe it's 1 lumen, especially for a small light like this. I don't know why they've picked 10, but okay, I would have picked 1, so it doesn't ruin night vision, but that's what they've chosen. And under their testing, I think it was on a 700 milliamp hour battery. Now bear in mind it's an 800 they give you, which is nice. So on their testing you should get at least 18 hours out of that on that mode, moonlight. So in the main modes, I'll show you. So there's low. So low should be, in fact, actually I think I might have that wrong. I'm pretty sure that the moon mode is, in fact I have got that wrong. That was 1 lumen, believe it or not. That's 1 lumen. That seems more than 1 lumen to me. Maybe it's an artifact of the emitter. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look into more of that. Okay, maybe that is 1 lumen, but it seems a lot more to me. Okay. It did seem a little bit bright, although for walking it certainly wasn't. I wasn't able to see, especially on camera, to show that. But okay, I would certainly want less than that for a map. But okay, so 1 lumen, they're saying 85 hours on their testing. So we'll go back to the group. So turn that on. There you go. So low. Okay, so that's about 10 lumens, 18 hours. Next one, medium, 100 lumens, pretty decent, 4 hours. And then high, 400, 1 hour on a 700 milliamp hour battery. I quite like that mode actually. The 400 seems to be like a bit of a sweet spot for this light. And I used it along the river and out doing some sort of urban walking and exploring. And I really liked that. And it didn't heat up too much, and the battery lasted a long time. I definitely got more than an hour on that mode from a full battery, but maybe it was because it was so cold, and there was certainly no step down in that mode. But obviously within those steps you can double click, bang, and then that's turbo. That's the brightest. So that's 1,000 lumens. Now they're also saying that gives you an hour, but bear in mind there is step down in that. So yes, you get an hour, but you're not getting 1,000 lumens for an hour. You get it initially, and then it steps down through temperature. So pretty good. You also have a 3-click mode. So when we turn that on, so 1, 2, 3, there. I'll cover that up because I don't want to annoy people. And there's 3 sort of modes within that. So you have, if I remember right, it's something like SOS, beacon, and strobe. So we'll go through them. So you press and hold. It should go there. So you've got like a strobe, and then you've got an SOS, and then I think you've got a beacon. Is that the beacon? You need to click and hold to go to the next one. There, that's like a beacon. So it's a very infrequent flash at maximum output. So you've got those 3 extra modes if you want them. You also have 4 clicks, which is E-lock. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That should lock it. In fact, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4. Silly me, because that changes group mode. It needs to be off, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you get a few little flashes, right? That's in E-lockout mode. What I was happy to see was, I mean, puzzlingly, when it's in the E-lockout mode and you press it, you get 2 flashes to tell you're in E-lockout mode. I don't know what the point of that is, but okay. It's certainly a visual representation of what's happening. But when you're in that mode, you can click and hold and get moonlight and then let go. I like that. That reminds me of what you get with the with Toy Keeper's implementation of Angular, where if this is locked out, I'm not going to show you, but you can instantly get to a moonlight mode and let go. There's actually 2 on this. You can double press and get a little bit more, but that's a useful thing. So I was happy to see that. So you've got E-lockout mode with a little bit of moonlight if you need it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're back to normal. And it's got memory mode, so it remembers where you're up to. So all in all, pretty impressive. And what I want to discuss is the beam, because what I did was I tested it with all of these. I've been outside and I've tested it with all these small similar output lights. So what we'll do is we'll discuss the beam. So in fact, hang on, what I'll do is I'll bring a picture up here. Okay, so as you can see, I tested the PhyTorch ER16, the JetBeam Jet IMK, the Claris MI1C, which is tiny, very small light, the On the Road 311, which is a sort of an undiscovered gem, the Sofirn SC21, which this review is about, and the Lumentop FWAA. And I understand, yes, it's using a completely different setup. It's a TIR, not an orange peel like the rest of these, but I like to throw in a few little different lights which are a similar size but use a different technology, so you can just compare them. And then you've got the On the Road M3 Pro. I did test it with the normal M3, the non-Pro version, but they're very, very similar. The USB charging is the only difference. So let's see, what can we see here? You can see on the PhyTorch, it's more of a thrower because it uses it's more of a deeper bowl, and it's a more of a smooth reflector. So as you can see, the spill to the left and right is poor for out walking. You're losing some of the scene there, but you've got a nice hot spot. Although to be honest, the throw isn't that much better than the JetBeam next to it. That JetBeam is very underrated. I would argue that the JetBeam is doing a pretty good job. Bearing in mind it's taking a small amount of light, slightly smaller than the PhyTorch, and it's spreading it out there and still doing a decent job. And colour reproduction are very similar between them. It's actually a little bit warmer maybe than the one next to it. And then you can see the gem here is the Claris MI1C. Look, that's a beautiful flood there, but that uses an aspherical lens rather than a reflector of any kind. But I just like to throw that in there. So pretty decent, nice colour reproduction. You know, for a small light, it's decent. On the Road M3, I would say you've got more of a hot spot, but it still spreads out nicely. Sofirn does a decent job. What I would say is the Sofirn, if you compare the On the Road 311 on the left there to the Sofirn, we'll zoom in on that bridge right in the distance. So you see, throw is better on the Sofirn. Even though they're using exactly the same sort of orange peel reflector, obviously there's more power. You know, you're getting more of an output on the Sofirn SC21 because these were all taken at their maximum output. So this was at 1,000 lumens, and you're not going to get that on the road, even though they might claim you get that. I think it's only about 800 or something like that. The lumen top, I think, is the best colour reproduction. It looks more lifelike in this sort of set that I did, and the throw again is very superior, although you could argue that the throw is slightly better than the Sofirn, which surprised me, although I would say it may look like that on the bridge, but it certainly isn't the case in totality for that scene. More of the things in the distance pop out, like the tree right in the distance. So I still think the lumen top wins more, but the lumen top's got more lumens. So, and it's using a different emitter, so that goes without saying. And the On the Road M3 Pro, it looks a little bit muggy to me. You're losing some of the background detail, and it looks probably colour reproduction wise is nice. It's a nice tint, but it doesn't look as bright as the Sofirn SC21. So We'll get rid of that picture, so we'll move that out of the way. Okay, so we've moved that. So what conclusions can we draw from that? Well, the conclusion really is it's nothing special, is it? But it certainly does a decent job. You get enough flood and you get a bit of throw, which is the whole point of a small EDC flashlight with an orange peel reflector. And in that regards, and for the price, I think it does a decent job. I mean, like I say, I still like these. They've got a slightly better tint than this, but things move on, and these, you know, this Samsung emitter, I was quite impressed with it. Color reproduction wise, especially on water scenes when I was checking, were quite desirable to the human eye, and that may not be picked up on the camera, but I've tried to show you that in some of the shots. The question is, what would I rather go for? These might be slightly cheaper, but on the road are harder to get a hold of, where you can just pop to Amazon and get one of these. So I'll probably get this as a gift, and it's got, you know, battery check, and it's got a nice lockout with a secondary mode, and like I say, a totally different price range for the FW here, the lumen top, and more output, but it's using a triple emitter SST20, and it's a TIR, not an orange peel, whereas all the rest of these, apart from this Phi torch, as you can see, you know, this is the one that had the more throw, but all of these are orange peel. I'll show you that, so you can just see, apart from the Claris, so you can see, very similar. They're all using an orange peel, which I think is decent for a small EDC light. I was still impressed with this tiny little Claris. I mean, uses an aspherical, which might look, that reminds me of like a cheapo from eBay, but you can't argue with the results. For a medium distance and up close, it's pretty spectacular. But some people don't like the Claris brand, and that's fine. So put them to one side. I've done loads of outdoor testing. I've carried this for a long period of time. What I'll do is I'll go over some good points and bad points, because I think that's a quick and concise way of finalising how I feel about this light. So we'll talk about pros first. So pros, cheap. I think this is cheap for what you get. You're getting the battery in with a pack, brilliant. You get your cable, it's got your clip, it's got all the things you need. If you were to buy this as a gift, that's brilliant. Got no problems with that. Orange peel reflector, I think, was a sensible choice. It works, it's decent. As you saw from those images, it's got enough throw, it holds its own with those other lights. Colour reproduction was good, especially on water and in woodland. I had no issues with that. It's certainly very small. I mean, look, there's my hand. Look, you can't see it now. Gone. Very small. I mean, I realise there's no clip on here, but this easily got lost in my pocket, and I mean that in a good way, not a bad way. I was able to put this into my daily collection of rubbish that I put in my pockets, no issue, because generally in the summer I carry a lot less, because I don't want pockets banging around, whereas in winter I'll carry a lot bigger lights and things like that. Really like that. It's very small. It's got onboard charging, and with that it's got Type-C and power delivery, so brilliant. It works whilst charging, another point. E-lockout, brilliant, with a little secondary cheeky moonlight mode. You can immediately get the moonlight. You've got double click for turbo. You've got your strobe modes if you really want them. You've got a battery thing. Really good. Comes with your cell. There's a lot to like about this, and as usual, Sofirn knock it out the park when it comes to what you're getting value-wise. So, but with that comes some cons. So yes, there's the paint. It's a little bit daft. Why is the ramping so slow in the group mode 2? Seems like to take forever. I feel like I'm being abducted by aliens and I've lost time. I'm waiting and I'm waiting and waiting. That could be speeded up, but that's not the end of the world. Is that I have to be picky, and I realise that to most people aren't sitting with a clock going, hurry up with the ramping, in the middle of the night. I do those sorts of things. Width of the USB hole, not acceptable. That needs to be wider. I've never come across that with other lights. And I've used that cable many times for many lights, never had an issue. That's something they maybe want to think about, or just the height. There's got to be something they can do, but they'll have to redesign this. So I can't see them doing that unless they do a full redesign for a V2. But as it stands, that's something you need to be aware of. Yes, I understand people will argue and say, well, just shut your face and use the cable that comes with it. What if I haven't got that cable? So a little bit of an issue there. And again, I did notice some power drain, but I was unable to duplicate that, and I think it was just me having it in the pocket and not locked out, and maybe it was in moonlight or something like that. Clip removes paintwork, but it's a Sofirn. We'll get on with it. So let's try and amalgamate all those things I've said. So many good points at this price point. A few problems, one of them inexcusable. So I'm going to give this a 7. I would like to give it more, but I can't, because if you have the wrong cable, you can't charge it. I'm sorry, that's a problem. So I'm going to give it a 7. If they did a V2, extended this, sped up the ramping, maybe did something about the clip so it's not whacking all the paint off like someone working in a shipyard, then it would be an 8.5 or something like that, because it's brilliant and it comes with a cell. It's a really nice capable light, and as you've seen from the results of what it actually does, and in other words what it's spitting into the world, it does a great job, and I enjoyed using this. I would love to give it more, but that critical point on the charging, it's a shame, that big shame, but I'll give it a 7. I wish I could give it higher, but I've got to be honest. Okay, so enough of me waffling. I'm sure you've had quite enough of me. I try to keep this rapid, but you know what it's like with me. I get carried away, and then 6 hours later I think, whoops, time to edit that down. Okay, so let's get outside. I'll show you some beam shots. I've done lots of comparisons and side by sides, and hopefully I'll show you what this looks like in the real world. So thank you for joining me. 7, it's a shame, but I'm gonna have to give it 7. Get it as a gift maybe, I don't know, but come on, Sofirn, get the width of that sorted, and this would be a right little gem. So enough of me waffling, I'm off. Goodbye.